Angela, Chair of the Global Black Caucus.
And I'm Adrianne. I lead our caucuses, get out the voting.
Welcome to the Power to the People podcast.
2025, and we're in our season of opposition.
And we will not obey in advance. Power to the people. Welcome to the Power to the People podcast. And I'm Angela Fubbs, and I'm here today with our new chair, Adrianne George. You know Adrianne. She
feel like
is
you're introducing a new person. Then people are like, who? It's like me, they're like, oh, okay. But
that's right. Yeah, we switched roles. Well, no, we didn't really switch roles. I don't have the role of chair anymore, and Adrianne is our fearless leader. And today we have a great guest with us today, straight from Minnesota, Ron Harris, Minnesotan activist. Okay, welcome.
I just titled him that. Yeah, and it's not his Ron's first time. Remember, gosh, Ron, how long ago was it? It would have been over. It's been about 8 years ago now.
About 5 years since I was on this with you all.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you were chief resilience, I want to say officer for the city where you were living. And let's fast forward to now what you're doing.
Yeah, first excited to be here to have, another important conversation. It feels like Minnesota is yet again in sort of national crosshairs, albeit for different reasons, but certainly, excited to share what we're up to and have that conversation. But what I've been up to has been a lot of the same, in that previous job that you mentioned, Adrianne. My job was to pick up the red phone, right? When at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, some sort of crisis or some sort of moment that we had to build resilience for or strategize ourselves out of. And I've taken that and I've done a handful of things since leaving city government. Briefly ran for Congress a couple of years ago. Prior to that, was traveling the world, advising local governments on, resilience and economic development and things like that, to prepare cities for the sorts of things that, unfortunately, we're experiencing today in many of our cities here in the U.S. And after that, ran Kamala Harris's campaign for president in Minnesota. And even though we didn't get the national win, of course, Minnesota kept its streak alive in being the state that has carried the presidential for Democrats the longest out of any country, or I'm sorry, out of any state in the country. So we did our part, but of course didn't win all of it. So it's been a lot of that. And then this past year took a little bit of a step back to really, take all these experiences and sort of figure out exactly, as Black folks in particular, how do we choose our route versus accepting the routes that other people choose for us, which anybody Black listening to this or on this call knows how that feels. It's like, oh, I've mastered your game. But then the moment you try to operate your own, all of a sudden the resources and the relationships start to shift a little bit. So all that to say, I spent the year navigating those things, and now I'm excited to kick off 2026 as a co-founder to a couple of different businesses. One of them is I got sick and tired of seeing leadership across the board, political, private sector, nonprofit, government, what have you. A lot of people are loudly wrong about what's going on in society, and there's a lot of people who are quietly right. I'm trying to find the quietly right leaders, the leaders who are modeling something different within their organizations or speaking a different language as it relates to what needs to be happening in the country. And I am hand selecting leaders that I will be helping to build up their brand and visibility, build up their digital profiles and their digital ecosystem, build up their speaking abilities and get them in the right panels and those sorts of things, because more leaders need to be seen, and doing a series of things like that as well. So all that to say, still trying to find a way to make a difference and to get ready or to stay ready without having to get ready, because what's going on in Minneapolis now, we'd be in a whole lot of trouble if we just waited to get ready for this moment, as opposed to develop the sorts of relationships 4 or 5 years ago that now we have to tap into today.
Well, that's really great, because we do need to find the people who really know what's happening in the United States and get them bigger platforms and get them running for elected office or whatever. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of people that don't really actually know what is happening. And I feel like, I honestly, sometimes when I hear some of our political leaders speak, and I mean, and I'm not even talking about Republicans, I mean Democratic leaders, I feel like they're a little bit in denial about what is happening. And so I applaud your efforts to try to find
Well,
people.
I think there's a sense of denial and there's a sense of lack of urgency about what the moment actually is. And the denial, I think, comes from a level of discomfort, and we actually don't know what's going on. So we're going to deny that anything is going on. Or I'm going to cling to my facts and cling to the things that make sense to. It's the exact same thing, actually, when I think about Trump supporters, right? And again, I'm not equating our folks with Trump folks, but just hear me out for a minute. I think MAGA folks are clinging to a world that made sense to them, whether or not that world actually existed, right? This sort of false nostalgia where I could say whatever I could want to do, and those immigrants weren't taking our jobs, and I could, as a man, I can go on dates, and I could, all those things, and now they think that that's all been taken from them, so they're clinging to a world where it made sense. I would argue that a lot of our leaders are also clinging to a world, I think, a little more realistic, but also made sense to them. Like when these economic charts with stock and GDP meant that everybody was thriving. Oh, I'm going to hold on to that. That ain't the case no more, but I'm going to hold on to something that made more sense. So anyway, I think part of it is a unfortunate self-delusion in terms of what's actually going on.
Now, yeah, Ron, I met you when we were on the DNC together. You were chair of the Midwest Caucus region. Are you still on the DNC? Are you still leading that caucus region? I think my colleague Steve is on there. And what's going on? And you don't have to answer this if you can't, but somebody shared something with me in one of my Sweden groups about the DNC not releasing the autopsy report and how disillusioned that made her feel. So what does that even mean and what are we supposed to be feeling? What were we supposed to be getting? What are we not getting?
Good
And
questions.
how
Yeah, we
do you
met a while
feel?
ago when I first got on this bad boy. In 2016, I got on. In 2017, I got elected chair, and I've been chair of the Midwest Caucus ever since. Even still, I'm in my third term on the DNC, which is weird to say because I felt like I started as the young buck and somehow became the vet. And I look in the mirror and not much has changed. So I'm like, what is going on? Um, but so yeah, I've been on the DNC now for about 10 years, with 3 more years to go in this term. And let's talk about the autopsy really quick. So for those who don't know, um, typically after big losses like we experienced, of course, in 2024, the party that lost would do a autopsy report or minority report or some sort of after action review. We didn't want to call it autopsy because we didn't die. We got wounded, but we're not dead. But it's the same thing, which we're going to review, ask big questions about really how did we get here and decisions that were made and dollars that were spent and partners that were, contracted and go all the way through looking at the polling and exit interviews. And, I know the DNC, the office that led it, talked to staffers from every single state who were working on the campaigns. I ran the campaign, like I said, in Minnesota, and both when it was Biden and Kamala. So it was, different interviews and things like that. And
I
Ken
was
Martin.
interviewed. They interviewed people from all the state parties.
Exactly, right. We want to get a really comprehensive perspective from not just insiders, but from folks who touched the campaign or experienced the campaign or what have you. Because we got, and if we're being honest, there's a lot of folks who are withholding support to the party, in large part because they want to see if the party actually understands the lessons that need to be learned. Right. Oftentimes we get into this stuff and we learn lessons, but we don't learn the actual lessons. We learn the lessons that, again, make us feel comfortable and make sense to us. And I'm not saying that that's what we're doing here at the DNC. I should say they because of the staff, but I am saying that, I think that can happen. Ken Martin, who's the new DNC chair, campaigned in part saying, yeah, Uh, Last time we lost the presidential in 2016, we did an autopsy and never released it. That made no sense. This time we definitely have to do it, and we're definitely going to release it. And it took a while to put this thing together. I think it's a massive effort, and there's a lot of data to crunch through, and like I said, a lot of players and stakeholders to communicate with. And ultimately, the chair and the DNC, the chair and the leadership decided not to release the report. The rationale that was expressed publicly was essentially Democrats have just came off all these big wins in 2025. Won or overperformed in like 90% of the races, right, that we've participated in, which is huge. Grassroots fundraising's breaking records. Trump keeps stepping in it, right? I mean, Epstein files, you can go on and on about how much momentum that we can actually build. And what was communicated to us was releasing this report will essentially just make everybody focus on that. And right now we need to be focused on the future. That was rationale. So, for me, and I'm really close to the chair, uh, full transparency, and we haven't talked about it privately yet. But one thing I do know about him as a leader and the decisions that he makes is plenty of them I have not agreed with, but I always know they're coming from thinking of the long game. So I'll give you an example of the long game. Uh, the chair got beat up a bit a couple of months ago for, fundraising numbers a bit dry, and the DNC had to take out a loan, $15 million loan, um, early, right, to sustain operations and sustain their investments and things like that. Media beat them up for it, right? But every single new chair, right, has, especially after a loss, has actually had to take out a loan at the DNC. The only difference is that they wait until the midterm or after the midterm to do so. Ken decided, well, it's actually better for us to spend a bunch of money early, spend early money, spend investments in Dems abroad, and spend investments in state parties, and double the investments that we've been making in state parties and things like that, and invest in red states, or I should say future blue states, at a higher level than we invest in current blue states. But that requires more money to be spent on the front end, which meant he had to take out the loan earlier. My point is, on a surface level, it may seem like, well, what, they're in trouble. What are they doing? But it's like, nope. And that long-term investment, by the way, that was made at the beginning of 2025, paid off towards the end of it. I would argue, when I look at their election results, when I look at the people that we engaged, not just the quantity of engagements, but the quality of engagements. When I look at, the singularity and focus that it seemed that our message was this fall, which was about affordability. Like, when I look at, even though the Republicans have significantly more money in their coffers, they're not getting the same results that we're getting with uh, us being better steward of our resources. So anyway, all that to say, I'm looking at this decision with a very similar lens, where would this be the choice that I would make? Given the information that I have, no. But do I trust that who made the decision and what they were thinking about in terms of the long game? Yep, I'm gonna bet on that, because earlier long game investments have been made and they've cashed out. I'm gonna trust that these will as well, until I see differently. So to answer your second question, how should we be feeling? I never want to tell people how they should feel, but I want to give people permission to feel what they do feel. I think there's a range of feelings. I actually understand the feeling of disillusionment. I get it, because you're already talking about an entity or an institution that generally people just don't trust. Part of it, they don't trust it because they've seen decisions made. Part of it, they don't trust it because it is the catch-all for all the things that Democrats do, even though the DNC, as you all know, has very, very, very little control over what people can do, say, et cetera. Part of it is because it's a big institution that people don't fully understand. Either way, the Democratic brand is not good at all. So when I think about building trust, I think about transparency. And so you have people who are willing to trust the institution that feel like this was not a transparent move. And so I can see where the disillusionment comes from. I don't know if it's fair to say, hey, trust me, trust us, we got it. Like, trust the long. I don't know if that's a fair thing to say. But I will say a fair thing to say is, frankly, we got two teams. We got a red one and we got a blue one. I don't know how much sense it makes to beat up your own team when the rules of the game are very simple and the players are pretty fixed. And so I think that you can both critique the decisions of an institution and disagree with them, and also not abandon ship, and also uh, not take it like a personal slight. Because here's the thing: think about this. If you're running an organization or a political party, would you say, I'm gonna do this thing that's gonna hurt people's feelings and break their trust just because I don't give a damn about them? Like I'm gonna personalize, I want to make you feel further disillusioned. No, they would never do that. Right. So even that alone makes me say, okay, I can't look at this as a personal thing, like, oh, we are trying to make people feel disillusioned. No, you have to know that those are the risks, which then tells me, okay, this was a hard choice to make, given the reputation of the party and what people are expecting. So, what I'm telling people is, hey, look at the results. We can talk about the decisions made, and then we can talk about the results of those decisions. The party's doing pretty well right now. How about we find ways to support it? Ask questions where we need to ask questions. Voice dissent or voice frustration or confusion when we need to, but do so in a way that's still committed to making the thing better that we all believe should be successful. Because if this thing is successful, that means at the very least the red team is not, and that's a good. At a bare minimum, that's a good thing for me. I know I'm preaching here, but that's how I would think about it.
I had forgot that the report was supposed to come out and that I was even part of the SWOT analysis until someone said, "Oh, it wasn't coming out." So I know the story is always a bigger story than it maybe needs to be, but I just wondered if you had been anticipating it because you were an insider. So they didn't just talk to insiders because you were like, just, and I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely not an insider. Just somebody on the state team that they talked to. Um, and I just do wonder how it would inform some state parties moving forward. Um, Democrats abroad, we're unicorns. We operate differently because we don't have candidates, political candidates.
I mean,
But if it
I'll
was,
ask you this. I don't think there's anything in the report, and full transparency, I've not seen it. I don't know the outline. I've got very little additional information than most. Um, but from what I understand, there's nothing in this report that will come as a surprise to anybody. Meaning, and I'm stepping way out on a ledge here. This is Ron talking, not anybody else or any organization or any other person. But if if most of us are generally clear about sort of what happened in the election, right? There wasn't a single one thing. There's a series of things, whether lack of prioritization in certain communities, whether we're spending too much money on TV ads and not enough on digital ads, whether it was not investing in young people early enough, whether it was Biden staying in the race too long, whatever it was. We know there's a range of possibilities, and there's nothing really that pops up that says, "Oh, that's the one thing." So then I think a lot of people, and I'm not, there's a lot of people out there who want the support to come out in large part for a sense of vindication. Oh, I was right about this. See, I knew that they spent too much money here. I knew the consultants were making all this stuff and nobody was making any at the bottom, or I knew they didn't invest in these communities, right? Like it's more of a vindication. Like people are really upset about what happened in 2024. I am one of those people. I ran a campaign. People didn't listen to us. We did our own thing anyway. We ended up winning, but we were punished for not doing what everybody wanted us to do, even though they lost. So I know people are upset about this. And it feels good to be vindicated. Like, oh yeah, see, the reason why I thought we lost, I knew it. See, I knew it. That's actually, I think, what people are upset about. We're not going to learn, again, I haven't seen it, but my guess is we're not going to learn anything really radically different than what I'll give you right now. Number one, we told everybody the economy was strong based on graphs and charts and not on anybody's lived experience. And once we did that, people chose not to trust anything else that that party or that president or anybody else had said. Number two, we took young people for granted. We thought that just by talking about how bad Trump is would be enough to motivate young people and black people and brown people to get out and vote. Instead, we told everybody that, oh, Trump this is a racist and thought that that would motivate black folks and brown folks. But guess what? And I'm certain about y'all on this call. I beat racists every single day. I'm not afraid of a racist. I've conquered them my entire life. And so you dangle in front of me, oh, he's a racist. It's like, yeah, doesn't scare me. Right? I can beat that. And I'm thinking that that's in the mindset of a whole lot of folks who are not super political, but they're not going to fall with that. Another reason why we weren't successful, spent way too much money on TV ads and not enough money on actual investments. We focused on outputs more than outcomes. We've prioritized number of doors knocked or number of people talked to and not quality of conversation or quality of engagement or quality of connection. That's why we lost. I think we lost because Kamala didn't have enough time. 107 days when people have built presidential campaigns over the course of 3, 4, 5 years, that's hard. And then we got to pivot from the oldest candidate ever to a black woman in 107 days running against a gaslighter, the most notorious gaslighter in the history of the country, who, by the way, is coming off with 34 felonies. Nothing happened. Assassination attempt, right? All these things has been running since 2015.
Yes.
Right. And then this is my own editorializing. I think Biden stayed in too long. Biden pretty much told us he's going to be a one-term transition president. And when you go back on your word like that, the great Bell Hooks says something I say it every time I get a chance to get on a mic. Great philosopher Bell Hooks said, cynicism is the great mask of the betrayed and brokenhearted. When you go back on your word and you don't actually acknowledge that you did that, but you just start acting right, there's still something missing. Y'all have been in relationships, friendships, partnerships, whatever, where somebody screwed up and instead of saying, oh, I did that, I'm sorry, they just started acting right. And it was like, what? Well, but you didn't acknowledge the pain you just got. And it always feels weird. And matter of fact, you're actually more mad at them than you are mad at people that you knew didn't have your back anyway. That's what's going on with the party. Everyone's like, why aren't you mad at the Republicans? Because we never trusted them in the first place. They never had a chance to betray us or break our hearts. You guys did, and then you did. So therefore, we have more cynicism about you because we originally trusted you. That's my hypothesis. I can write your 100-page report to back all that stuff up, but I think that's why we lost. And I think, great, we know that, we knew that. A lot of us said that, and no one listened. Now they're starting to listen. I say we take that and we move forward and focus on winning.
I agree. I mean, that we should move forward. I also agree that I think people uh misestimated how bad Trump would be. I just think that yeah, that a lot of people misunderestimated. They just thought that the things that he was saying, despite the fact that there was Project 2025, a 900-page document that said everything that they're doing now, was real because he said it wasn't real, which again is shocking to me that so many people believed his lies, even the stuff about groceries and all this other stuff.
It
I
used to shock me. It used to shock me, but I've been really thinking a lot more about this. I've been trying to talk to a lot of uh, Trump supported people too.
mm,
I know. Oof. But what I've gathered is one, again, if the goal is to get more people on our team than their team, we got to create space for them to come to, to arrive to the conclusion that they were wrong and not be like, nope, nope, you voted for it. We told you that. No, it's like, well, yeah, as much as I want to say that, it's not going to help me. And so I'm like, okay, let me try to talk to these folks. And I don't think that's for everybody, by the way. I don't think we all have,
not for
we're
me.
all called to a certain part of the mission, right? And people should stay in the lanes and what did TLC say? Swim in the lakes and the rivers that you used to. The second thing is, I used to be shocked by the level by which people would believe in what this guy has to say. I'm like, how the hell? How you're looking at him saying, how do you actually believe this? But humans are insanely capable and very good at believing what they want to believe. If you want to believe him, you will. If you want to believe that he's going to bring grocery prices, you will. And so what we're missing is not how could they believe that, but more so, why do they want to believe it so badly? Because we
Well,
can get to that.
Ron, yeah, because I was gonna say, can we segue to just now? We heard through the campaign you're eating the cats and the dogs. Fast forward now to what he's saying about the Somali community in Minnesota. Can we talk about that? Because I know
Yes.
we're not hearing it as much in the news every day, but it's still there and it's still people, it's still having its effect. So what,
I think it's a
I
great
mean, I still
transition. And
think we're still reeling. Okay, I was gonna say we're still reeling from George Floyd. Angela
I'll address
mentioned,
Angela's point with transitioning this piece, which is the eating the cats and dogs thing is just one example of the attempt to dehumanize and want to dehumanize a population of people. These folks know good and doggone well that there's not a community, a neighborhood of people running around and eating pets. However, they want to believe that these people are subhuman and even subanimal in some ways. And so any claim that they are that, they're going to pounce on because, yep, see, that's confirmation. I knew they weren't quite human. I knew they weren't. And you dangle something, it's like, boom, right? Like it's the same thing with conspiracy theories. The reason why they're so attractive to these folks is because they want to believe the thing that the conspiracy theory explains. They want to believe that Hillary Clinton is running a cabal under a pizza shop, trafficking kids. They want to believe that because they believe that she's the kind of person that would do that. Same thing with Trump. They believe that he's the kind of person that would bring down prices, partially because we gave him space to do that, meaning we're running around during the campaign saying the economy is strong and how good all these things are. Oh, stocks are this and 401k and all this other stuff. I'm talking to people being like, yeah, I don't have a 401k. So, what they got to do with me? And also, just because it says so on a chart doesn't mean I'm feeling it in my back pocket. And here's one thing we failed to actually communicate to people, and I think this was a fundamental mishap, is even though we are correct, that was one of the strongest economies we've ever had. Like Joe Biden actually, if we're being for real, if we measure his accomplishments around the economy the same way we measured everybody else's, he'd be on the back of a coin. That's how good the economy on paper, given where it came from as well, is. But what was happening right before that? The pandemic. What was going on during the pandemic? We had a lot of cash. Interest rates were doggone near zero. We had all that stimulus money. And so having all that cash felt like we had more money. Even though assets are worth way more now, and even though the economy, at least before Trump came, was hot, the fact that people were used to feeling a certain kind of way and they're not feeling that no more, don't campaign to the chart, campaign to what people feel. And so we created the space for Trump to be like, actually, the economy is not that good. And anybody who's saying that is lying to you. Well, that feels right because you know what? You're right. How is the economy good when I'm staying up every night looking at my bills, trying to figure out how do I afford this medicine or how do I pay this rent? Right. And so had we just said, you know what, y'all, on paper, the economy is strong. GDP, any other acronym that you want to do. However, we can't say the economy is strong until we, the American people, feel it in our back pockets. And so until you feel it as strongly as the corporations and the wealthy are feeling it, the economy is not strong. And here's what we're going to do as a result. You don't even have to have the right solution. You just have to meet the feeling. That's the point. He had no plan. He just met the feeling. And that was enough. Because the feeling was
That
accurate, not the
is
information.
that is so weird to me, and I know that you're right. I just find it shocking. And I'm just gonna just be honest at this point. We're all being honest. Um, so I went to the States a couple times last year, and I mean, yeah, it was expensive, but the United States is always super expensive. Even even like in like we went to the United States, my husband and I went to the United States in 2013, I think it was. And we were there for 2 weeks. He had some business there, and so we stayed at one of those like hotels, like with a kitchen, whatever in the room and all that. And we went to the grocery store, and I was shocked at the price differences between Colorado, where I was, and Germany. Like everything was like three times as expensive. Um, I mean, and it's not, I was just super shocked. I was super shocked when I was there, but in a way, for me, it's always expensive to go to the United States. It's everything, the price of everything has been really high for a long, long time.
And that right there should tell you just how bad things actually are. Because if we're accustomed to high prices, relatively speaking, to somewhere else, and we're all still saying that things are still too damn high, that means something's way off here, right?
Mm.
And people, even if they can't articulate, they can feel something's not right. because something's not right about this. Like I'm working as hard as I've ever worked, and it feels like things are getting harder and harder, and no one is providing an answer for me. Matter of fact, no one is actually even naming or claiming that what I'm feeling is for real. And so here's what I'll say about narrative. Narrative shapes reality, right? And the narrative is these prices are high. And now that I'm conscious that prices are high, I'm reminded every time I make a purchase, dang, these prices are high. And I think part of it is not only are prices high overall, where we've seen the biggest price increase has come on the things that we're buying most often. So we're feeling it. We're feeling the highest increases on the thing that we pay for most often, which is like a reminder. Every time I cut this mortgage check, every time I got to pay for childcare, every time they take money out for insurance, every time I buy these eggs once or twice a week, those are all the things that are what we're seeing high prices for, and those are the things that we're paying for most often. So I think it's part of that. And so back to the psychology, when I think about what the comments were in Haiti, eating cats and dogs, pets, people want to believe that that is what these are subhuman people. Therefore, I'm going to believe the evidence that confirms my original belief about them. Why? Because it's a lot easier for me to believe that these subhuman, animal eating, super dark skinned Haitians are taking my job than it is my skills have become irrelevant in the workplace, or I've fallen on hard times and I haven't figured out how to do it, or I made a mistake, or whatever the thing is for the reason why you're not happy in your life. And that's most people economically, by the way. It's easy to blame the immigrant for taking the job as opposed to the factory for closing down or the corporation for merger and acquisition or whatever, right? And then in Minneapolis, Trump has been saying since 2016 he was elected, but Ilhan Omar was elected that same night. She was elected to the House of Representatives in Minnesota, right? First Somali American ever elected in this country to anything. Since that happened, he has been saying for years about Somali people. He called them Somalians, which is derogatory. But he talks Somali people are this and they're that, and they're subhuman and they're vile and they're vermin and they're taking over our country and they're defrauding our this and you hear that so much that all of a sudden those who want to inflict violence upon people who they think are taking their stuff now feel justification for doing so. Or at the very least, they're rooting for those who are doing so. So you might not actually participate in violence, but you're rooting for the guy who's campaigning on essentially bringing violence to the city and violently getting these people out of the way because they're subhuman.
Wow.
Now, here's what's wild. They're making it about immigration, but 90 some percent of Somali people are actually legal in this country, either citizens or legal immigrants. So this is the wrong population to mess with in the first place, right? So that tells me right there, ain't about immigration, it's about hatred. Number two, what I find fascinating is what do they say about immigrants? They don't work, or they're taking our jobs, or they're not doing it the right way. They're not following the rules. They're not following the law. So if they're not working and they're not following the law, why are you rounding people up in courthouses and on job places and construction sites? Because if they weren't working, you wouldn't go to their job. If they weren't following the rules, you'd be going to the courthouse during their immigration date as they're doing it legally. And
Yeah.
so when you think about the collective dehumanization, and then you call them violent and all this stuff, now you justify the federal government coming in, ICE coming in to bring order to these chaotic people who are breaking the law and defrauding us. And you've drummed up all this stuff, and in their minds, in other people's minds, oh, they also eat cats, they also eat dogs, they also marry their siblings, they also all the stuff that he said to the point now where ICE has arrested like 400 people here
Wow.
in a couple of weeks. And here's the thing. Not only have they arrested those folks, we found out yesterday that the federal staff at the courthouses where they're doing these immigration cases and things like that are starting to not let in public observers, advocates, organizations, even though these are public trials, not just call them trials, they're public hearings. And advocates have always been able to get in that. Immigration attorneys have always been able to get in. Outside observers, regular people in this country, we've always been able to do it. And now they're starting to limit it here in Minnesota. The federal government is.
Wow.
So if you're doing the right thing, you're not trying to hide. We're trying
So
to hide.
they've rounded up 400 people. And here's the thing, we don't know where they are or what happens
Some we
next.
know where they are, some we don't. We know that there are plenty of them who actually are citizens, or so again, without due process, which due process is essentially, hey, you snag me up, I get a chance to prove that that ain't me, or you got the wrong person, or whatever. No, they're just grabbing everybody, and eventually they'll get to it because they won't tell us where they're at. So here's what's sad. My mother told me when they first started coming to Minneapolis, she was like, when your hair is longer and curly, people mistake you for East African all the time, and you can't I don't want you out here with your hair longer. It's like the next iteration of the talk.
Yes, yes, my mother has had the exact same talk with my brother, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not interested in coming to the United States because my brother looks kind of Hispanic. He's not, but for racist people, you know,
And
you
here's, and here's the
you
thing.
know.
I wrote this statement about not only do we need to stand up for our Somali neighbors, but that we as Black folks have a particular responsibility as members of a diaspora, meaning those who seek to harm us aren't separating us from Haitian, Dominican, Afro-Latino, Black, mixed, Somali. They ain't separating that. They see Black, they see brown, they see threat, and that's it. And so it makes no sense for us to divide ourselves, knowing that while we have different routes to this country or different routes to different parts of the world, we all came over on a couple of the same boats and we just got off at different stops. That's pretty much it, right? Not erasing our cultures and things like that. But my point is, those who seek to harm one of us seeks to harm all of us, and they don't separate us. So why would he separate ourselves? And that's been a lot of the work that's been happening here. So like, there's a lot of conversations about how do we bring Black folks all the way across? How do we bring us together to stand up in a moment like this? Because again, when one of us is at threat, we actually are all at threat, no matter how much we try to differentiate or divide ourselves. There are organizations doing know your rights trainings. So in multiple languages, in Spanish, in Somali, in some other languages spoken here, to make sure that not only do immigrants know their rights, but we as advocates also know our rights in terms of demanding a warrant before somebody can enter your place. And these ICE agents will lie and say they're able to do one thing and they're actually not. No, how do we teach people to do that? We've been providing whistles to everybody in the city who wants them, right? And so people get whistles and noisemakers. So when they catch somebody trying to do something, they can at least bring some attention. We're doing the sorts of things that are a nuisance, but make people feel like they're a part of something. So someone got wind of where the ICE agents were staying, the out of town ICE agents, which
Oh,
hotel.
I saw that. I saw
They're
that on the news.
getting no sleep, right? We don't play about our people, is my point. And putting my resilience hat on, we take advantage of moments like these as we're meeting one need and plugging a hole in one community or standing up one community to build the sort of connective fibers that are going to be necessary when a different community might be under attack next month or next year or in 2 years. So ideally, we're not recreating all the know your rights trainings and reorganizing people. We're just tapping back into an infrastructure that was built during hard times. So a lot of the infrastructure that we built during George Floyd's murder, for example, is very similar to the infrastructure that we're now tapping into to then uh, show up differently in this moment because it's all the same stuff. It's the state and people manipulating the state, targeting people who don't have as much power that have been traditionally targeted in this country. It's all the same stuff, different names, different players, but the same fight. And so while this moment really pisses me off and I'm really angry and I'm in many ways scared for my neighbors, so I have to walk around with blue passports now. Like this is 1930s Germany to prove that again, ICE didn't say you have to, but people are choosing on their own. Hey, I might get snatched up. I got to make sure that they know that I'm a citizen. I
Yes.
I walk around with my passport, right? Um, and I was born and raised here. And so my point is, it's tough right now. It's sad to see a lot of the stores 50, 60, 70% down in sales because immigrants aren't coming outside and opening up their businesses. And they're everyone's afraid. And these are folks who are not breaking laws. These are folks who are not criminals. These are folks who are doing it the right way. These are folks who came here when they were 6 months old, and this is the only country that they know. These are folks who came here on a visa and may have overstayed their visa because when Trump got in, he stopped everything, right? I mean, like they're like these are not folks who are eating cats and dogs and assaulting and abusing people and defrauding people and any of that stuff. Um, Matter of fact, there's data that shows that immigrants, even illegal immigrants, commit a fraction of the sort of crime, percentage of crime that born citizens do. I'm not saying they're morally better. I'm saying,
Undocumented, yeah, undocumented immigrants, right? We don't want to say illegal,
but yeah,
undocumented.
yes, thank you. Undocumented.
Yeah.
And, what was I saying? Not because there's some greater sense of moral values. I think it's because we're not look, if I know I'm undocumented, I'm not about to mess up in this country. I'm gonna follow every speed limit. I'm not about to do nothing. Why? Because the risk of me getting booted out, I'm not gonna follow the rules. Right. So anyway, all that to say, the rhetoric about the Somali people defrauding us of billions and billions and billions of dollars, that is not true. Feeding Our Future case, which everybody has heard about, was about $250 million, which is a lot of money and should not have been defrauded from. Let's be clear about that. But the ringleader was a white woman who had run a nonprofit and had essentially recruited all these minions and orchestrated the entire thing. And so everyone has all these pictures up of all these Somali folks who bought houses. I mean, folks who were part of this are reckless, don't get me wrong. But no one talks about the ringleader. So talk about so I've never, ever seen the government care more about the dime bag dealers on the ground than they care about the kingpin or the queen pin. But yet, when the dime bag dealers are black Somali people and the queen pin is a white woman, they don't even mention her. It wasn't an entire community that took advantage of the system. It was one person who organized a whole bunch more people to go do so. That's
Wow.
just the truth.
Wow.
And by the
Yeah.
way, the president uh, had a civil case where they basically said he defrauded people of $500 million, just him, and had to pay all that money back. So you talk about how terrible the Somali people are for 250. Yeah, you single-handedly are responsible for double the amount of fraud. And not only that, you have 34 felony counts. I don't
Yes.
know why people don't bring these things up when they try to call out whole communities. When you talk about what a whole community has done, yet you yourself have done significantly more just as an individual.
So, Ron, in addition to ICE officers posing a threat, are ordinary citizens being vigilantes or Minnesota's turning against Minnesotans?
That's a great question. I'll speak from just my own experience. I've only seen it online, right? Like trolls online, like, oh yeah, they say, oh, this is what we voted for. Get these people out of here. We're so sick of them. I haven't seen, neighbors ratting out neighbors or anything like that. I haven't seen that. That's not to say that it isn't happening or isn't going to happen as things get harder and harder for folks, but I haven't seen that yet.
Wow.
That's good. Angela, I'm sorry, just because haven't you heard, maybe not in Minnesota, but some people are turning on neighbors, reporting neighbors in some communities, saying, and we think immigrant families live here. I don't know how much of that is true or
Well,
not, but I'm
it is somewhat true. That woman she was running for political office in Georgia that turned in all the people at oh my God, what is this factory? With the Korean people that were there to help get the factory started. And she was running for political office. She called ICE on all these workers, these Korean workers. They were all there legally. They were all arrested by ICE. And then it's Hyundai. Hyundai stopped the factory. They just said, no, no more. We can't. And Georgia lost billions of dollars of business and
Wow.
jobs.
Now, this might be an unpopular opinion. I was talking to somebody about this last night. If I were like an immigration advocate and we're spending all this time making this moral argument about immigrants, how, they're entrepreneurs and they contribute so much to society and all those things, right? Which I'm not a fan of. I think people based on humanity alone should be treated with respect. But sure, let's make the moral case. I actually would go to corporations and say, do you all really want so much of your workforce slashed just to appease a president who's going to hold you hostage anyway? Like, I go to the companies themselves, and instead of making a moral argument about what rights they deserve, because they don't care, I make the economic argument of you're going to lose a lot of people who are willing to do jobs that the rest of us aren't willing to do. Like, do you really want to ban these people from this country when they represent so much of your workforce and your corporation and your operations? I don't think so. Like, make the moral argument on people who are open to the moral argument. Make the economic argument with everybody else.
And do we know what happens to the employers? They always go after the laborers and arrest them. What happened to the HR managers, the people who know
I don't
who
think that.
should be legally hired or not? Whatever happens to the
Well,
management?
I think if it were about the law, then I think there would be more of a focus. But it's not. This is about theater. Like there's no political theater in going after HR managers who pay people under the table. There is political theater of rounding people up from work and from their houses and from the courtroom. Like that, like back when I said earlier about the narrative, that is what the Trump administration has figured out for themselves is the truth does not matter. Reality does not matter. We can spin a narrative and we can shape a narrative for so long that people can't actually pay attention to what's real and what's not. And if they want to believe something, then they will. And so, and part of making people believe things is the theater of it.
I know you're not the attorney general, but another one of our favorite Minnesotans is your attorney general. I mean, I don't even know if when would he be up for reelection? I don't know how many terms you can have. And is
We're not,
there any like what's going on that he I know like with the George Floyd case, like what's the most egregious thing going on that he's working on now? If that's
uh,
if that
so
might even be something you can answer.
he's up for reelection in 26. So next year, 4-year term. There are no term limits in Minnesota for any race. Um, so that's what that is. He has been there's so many cases that he and his office have taken a lead on. A ton of them taken on the Trump administration. So many of the executive orders and these things like that that have been blocked have been a lot of it coming out of Keith's office, Attorney General Ellison's office here in Minnesota, or organizing other AGs around the country to block some of these things or file injunctions or all sorts of stuff like that. He also does a lot of consumer protection stuff. So, like if there are corporations taking advantage of people and their products or their services or their workers, he's found ways to bring pretty big lawsuits and return money back to people or things like that. There have been yeah, things like that. There we've had, you know, we haven't had another sort of police involved shooting the same way that we had with George Floyd as large, but we've still had a couple that he is also overseen as well. And then the big one was, our friends Melissa and Mark Hortman who were murdered. Who I was at dinner with the night before, by the way.
My
Um,
God.
Surreal to be there with them and then get a phone call 4 or 5 hours later that they were targeted and killed. And um, Keith's office is also part of bringing that murderer to justice as well.
Yeah,
Wow.
Angela
Yeah.
said pre-call Minnesota's taking a lot of hits this year.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember seeing, but I didn't realize until I looked it up today, was that plane crash in Toronto where the plane flipped over, that was coming from Minnesota when it was trying to
Mhm.
land. It's just like Minnesota's been, it's had a rough year this
Taking a
year.
lot of hits, whether it was
Yeah.
the Hortmans being killed and the Hoffmans being attempted murder, but thank God they survived. To a couple months later, we had a school shooting on the first week of school. At kids were sitting in mass. We actually had a DNC meeting that morning, that day, and I was with the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, in the executive committee meeting, and he had just got done with his speech, and I got up to go talk to him. He's a good friend, and we just got to catch up. He goes, "Hold on one second." He looks at his phone. He goes, I got to go. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I think there's a mass shooting
Mm.
at this Catholic school 3 miles away from our building. And so I was with him when he got the news. He got in the car and went straight there. And then we were getting ready to start our general session at the DNC, and we decided to just adjourn because it didn't make sense to continue party business when just up the street, parents are freaking out, wondering if their kid on the
Mm.
first or second day of school is going to make it back home later that day, right? So we experienced that. We're experiencing the first ICE raids, which were about the Latino community. Now this round two of ICE raids, and the governor today said that we expect more throughout the next couple of weeks into January, while people are at home or on break from school. Uh, so we've been through, and then of course, our governor was the vice presidential nominee, and you know that has just increased the amount of political heat and attention that comes on us. We have Ilhan here, who's a target of the federal government all the time. We've been going through it, and I have faith in my state and the people in it because, like I said earlier, one, we don't play about our people. Two, these moments always continue to make us stronger for the next thing, right? Um, and then the third is it shows me that we've done a lot of the groundwork before this moment to also make sure that things could be really, really, really bad. They could be much worse. And the fourth is, as much as I get frustrated with some of our own Democrats, and I'll be the first one to say I do, I'm grateful that we have statewide Democratic leadership. We have our state Senate is Democratic. Our House is split, but at the very least, it's not in Republican hands. And I don't want to make this moment partisan, but I'm grateful for the ways that Democrats have led and shown up in our state over the course of this past year.
Yes, I am grateful for that too. I think it would be a lot worse if you had Republican leadership in your government, your state government, for sure. Um, wow. I We're gonna win in 2026. We're gonna win,
And speaking
and
of
that's
winning, Ron, are you going to be announcing any election that you're running in any elections?
Mm-mm.
And would we
Uh,
already know by now?
we would know by now. I have no plans in either running campaigns or running for office myself in 2026. This year for me is going to be about building up the capacity and the infrastructure necessary for the fight. Um, are there ways that we can build infrastructure and technology and ways of being that where people can experience politics differently, they can experience campaigns differently, and I think there's some openness to that. I think we've figured it out, or we're starting to figure it out. There needs to be a lot more empathetic leadership in our politics. There needs to be a lot more understanding of humanity at a time where humanity is quickly trying to be attempted to be replaced in some ways by automation and AI, which I think there are
yes,
positives of, but I think that we're still not quite ready for it. Um, and so I'm doing some work in AI as well to center more humanity, but also leverage the tools and give us confidence that we can use these things to help us win. Um, and this year's also going to be about um, alignment, meaning as Black folks, we have given so much to institutions and to systems and to all sorts of things because that's our way in, right? Get a seat at the table, create more space for other people, get one of us so we can make more room for all of us, whatever we've had to do to navigate these things. And I'll be honest with y'all in this call. I am sick of those things being the center of gravity. I'm sick of the party being the center of gravity or the government being the center of gravity or this corporation being the center of gravity or or the system of whiteness or white approval to be the center of gravity. 2026 for me is going to be about I'm the center of gravity. I'm going to be the thing. I'm going to play the game that I think needs to be played the way that I think it should be played. I've mastered all of y'all's games. I've figured out this party and this institution and this space and this club and this group of people and this money and nope. Great. Now I think as Black folks have the power to play the sort of game and architect the sort of game that makes everybody else play ours. We dominate culture. We dominate cool. We dominate being good stewards of our resources. When you look at the lack of investment in, private capital or venture capital to Black-owned businesses or startups, particularly women, Black women founders and startups, and yet what we've been able to do with a little bit. I think about, in the Bible, Jesus talks about, the feeding the 5,000 with, you know, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish or whatever it was, or 5 fish, 2 loaves, one of those two. My point is, I think that we have thought about black excellence as getting really, really good at the things that are available to us, or really, really good at the things that uh at the way the society currently runs. And I think that's like version one of black excellence. I think version two is nope, now we're going to create those systems that society is going to have to revolve itself around. The way we lead, the way we speak, the way we build, the way we run, the way we lead, all of those things. And so, not to preach, but I'm not going to be out there the same way in 26 the way I was in some of these previous years. Not because I don't believe in it, but because I believe in other things as well that we have to invest in and go where we're celebrated. I am not interested in knocking a door down anymore. I done knocked enough of them down. I'm not interested in surviving in the room or speaking the language of that room. Nope, I done that already. I'm gonna speak my language in that room, and if a door needs to be knocked down, that's a room I don't gotta be in. I'll move on to a room that embraces me, right? Like that is 2026, and I want to model what that looks like for other people to do the same thing because I think we're fundamentally right about the things that I think we're right about.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that, yeah, you're right. We have learned their ways, and it's not like 100% working for us. And now we need to do what we got to do,
We
the
do what we
way
got to
we want
do.
to do it. Yeah,
Other communities have been the engineers of their own success. Okay, let us be engineers of our own success as well.
yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
I'm
agree.
almost cracking up because Angela's like, it hasn't really gone our way. And Ron is over here laying it down. I'm doing it different in 2026. And I'm thinking all of the things we talked about, we didn't mention your Harvard education. So you're like, I learned how to do it that way. I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to make sure you're using whatever you learned in that year you spent at Harvard. And I can't press you anymore, but maybe you running for something in 2028. I still believe that you need to be okay, you're shaking your head. So you're gonna make the change you need to make, but you're one of the best, brightest, most on point, inspiring leaders that I know. I mean, I'd vote for you if I could. Minnesota would be lucky to have you on the
Thank you.
state or federal level. So I just would never be um surprised if you ran again. But you've seen a lot in politics, and maybe you know that's not the route that you want to take. But Angela, wouldn't you vote for him? Don't you think he's the
Oh, a
type of
thousand
leader?
percent. 1,000%. What I was thinking was, yeah, you need to go to Ohio and do something with them because they need some help. There's no reason for Ohio to be dominated by Republicans when I'm from Ohio, and when
Hmm.
I grew up there, it was democratically run, and we were a very vibrant, we were the state where all the people from around the area, the states surrounding us came to because there were a lot of opportunities. And now, I mean, I'm not saying that Ohio is on its last legs, but if there's 10 more years of Republican rule, it will be destroyed.
Yeah, and I think we have to figure out as a people what we want. And I don't mean that by like here's a clear agenda with I don't think that's important right now. I think what's more important is one, even just knowing what we want, and two, recognizing that power is necessary to get what we want. Like that's just a fact.
Yeah.
And if we can commit to a vision of building power, I think it's going to be a heck of a lot easier for us to come together on the things that we want. And I've seen that with the right. The right, you know, didn't come to power over the last 50, 60 years with big old plans and all their ideas. They used a couple of ideas to build the power necessary to then advance the agenda that they wanted to pass. Meaning they had to build the power first. So like,
Mhm.
Mitch McConnell and others focused on abortion and taxes and just, and then they were able to then get not only corporations, but then they got the evangelicals, which used to be liberal and also pro abortion. People don't
Yeah.
remember. But he was able to get those and then build those coalitions. And all parts of that coalition, they don't all agree with each other on the policy agenda. What they do agree with, though, is that we want power. So we're going to get on
Yep.
the team that has the power, and then we can negotiate what we do with that power once we get it. But I'm committed to building the power. My point is, I think we need to have a very similar vision. We can disagree about what we want to do with the power. The only thing that we got to agree on is that Black folks should have power. Great. Are we agreed? Awesome. All right. Is power necessary for the thing that we want? Yep. Okay, great. What are the different sorts of power that we can build to get things that we want? Okay. Now we got people running for office. Now we got people who are starting businesses. Now we got people who are raising capital. Now we got people who are, who are organizing. Now we got people who are content creators or who share a mic. You see what I mean? And so none of these people got to agree with each other. They just got to agree on those simple things. Black folks should have more power. Here are the routes that we can build more power. We can decide what we do with that power later, but we just agreed with the vision that we have to build some. And I don't think we've gotten to that level yet.
Isn't that a nice way to end the Power to the People podcast?
That's
This
right.
episode.
That we need more power, and we need to agree that we need more power and stop worrying about weird factional disputes. Like,
Look,
that's pointless.
everybody's policy preferences are going to be proximal to their lived experience. And if we agree that there's no monolithic experience for Black people, then we certainly must agree that there aren't policies universally down the line that we're gonna agree on either. But I agree that we need more power, economic
100.
power, knowledge power, relational power, like access. That great, and we're not there yet. So, am I going to divide us up based on what do we do with our spoil, even though we don't have no, no, we ain't got it yet. I'm gonna say, here's how we go get it. We're gonna buy into a vision. We're gonna inspire each other, collectively move forward in this vision. Then once we get the spoils, then we can say, all right, let's figure out how we trust each other enough to get it. Now we can trust each other on how we want to spend it. So anyway, yes, I'm appreciative of being here for the conversation. Thank you. Again, glad that there are folks like yourselves and your listeners who still believe in the institution of government and politics, even though it's broken our hearts in different ways, so many times. Without good people, it would be significantly worse. So I appreciate you guys for being the good people that keep it going.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you again sometime in the future. And I don't know how far your network of people goes that you're trying to help, like, get in these positions of power. But I have a couple of people that I have a friend who just won a seat on a city council and they want to run for state office. Um, they could probably use your help for
Listen,
sure.
I'm happy to talk to, one commitment I made in 2026 is I'm not working with anybody I don't believe in. So if we believe in them, then I'm excited to help folks take up more space, take up more leadership, and ultimately benefit all of us with it. So
Yeah.
congratulations, Adrianne, on your chairpersonship.
Ron, thank you. I'm chuckling because I didn't want to be in this game right now, right? I thought we'd have President Harris and we'd be out. And it's funny how we see, how we're transitioning and using our energy and doing different things. For me, it was the Global Black Caucus. For you, I'm thankful for everyone you're about to help, already helping and inspiring. Make that leap from city council to state to federal to wherever it is that we need to be. Thanks for always being the change you want to see and encouraging us to do that. And thank you for, you know, always taking the time to come speak with us. It can be hard nailing you down, but you've never said no. And I appreciate that.
I appreciate the invitation. 2026, I'm committed to hiring a manager as well. So I promise it will not be as hard. to get us booked and get us our stuff set up. So thank you for your patience and thanks for all your great work. And thanks for the invitation. I'm looking forward to next time when we talk, we'll have a lot more good news to share. I'm
Yes.
certain.
For sure, we will. A quick reminder for everybody, January 1st, 2026, it begins the time when overseas voters can request your absentee ballot. So please remember, start early, vote in the primaries so we can get some good candidates, or at least challenge some of the older ones, so that, maybe we can get some different outcomes. And go to votefromabroad.org and request your absentee ballot starting on January 1st. Don't wait till the last minute, because, as they say, when we vote, we do win. But if you don't vote, this sort of living hell that we're in is never going to get better. So, yeah,
We're going
everybody
for better. We're
yeah,
going for better.
definitely we're going for better. So everybody vote and have a great holiday season, and we'll see you in the new year.
All right. Happy New Year, y'all. See you.
Happy New
Happy New
Year.
Year.
Dag, Ron.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yes, if something resonated with you, learned something, or you want to take action.
Stay in touch with the Global Black Caucus. Our link trees in the show notes. And always remember, power to the people.